The Chiefs offense continues to take deep shots down the field in training camp. What does it mean for this team in 2025? Coming up today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Do not forget we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am your host, Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. You can go find my work over at Chiefs Corner. Talk a lot about Patrick Mahomes and his stats, talk a lot about the salary cap, and we'll talk a little bit about the salary cap a little bit later in today's show. But today's show, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. We're going to talk about that George Karlaftis deal a little bit later on in this show. We're going to talk about the defensive adjustments that they're making and the players that are making a name for themselves with the first unit right now as it stands on the defensive side of the ball. But let's start off talking about the biggest storyline that is continuing to be something that the Chiefs are showing early on in training camp and is a huge boon for potential things that are going to happen for this Chiefs offense in 2025. That is the continued use of the deep ball. It seems like every single day we're getting more and more deep shots by Patrick Mahomes to Xavier Worthy, to Hollywood Brown, to Tyquan Thornton down the field. This is exactly what the Chiefs offense was missing in 2025 or in 2024. This is exactly what they need to do to try to get this offense to look better than it did last year. They were still very efficient. They were still able to move the ball. They were able to get things done and be efficient and score points offensively. But the lack of having a downfield passing game really hurt them at times during the 2024 season and really hurt them in the playoffs in 2024 as well as the Super Bowl. Talked about this a little bit yesterday with Ryan, and one of the biggest things that kept them from passing the ball downfield in 2024 is the lack of protection. And Creed Humphrey talked after practice saying that he thinks that Josh Simmons looks like he's fully healthy. And I cannot emphasize enough how big it is if they can potentially get even a average playing person at that position at left tackle. If he can be just average in 2025, it's a huge step forward for this offense. That's not meant to be a shot at Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney was a fantastic guard. He is going to be a Hall of Famer one day. I truly do believe that. But he is not built as an offensive tackle. He doesn't have the length for it. He doesn't have the foot speed and the reach to be able to get outside and stay with the faster pass rushers. He's better in a phone booth. Getting a guy that has the length, that has the ability to kick step and get out and get in front of the pass rushers that are going to be coming at Patrick Mahomes in the AFC West, getting out in front of all of the good pass rushers that the Chiefs are going to face this year in the AFC and the NFC and the playoffs and hopefully potentially in the Super Bowl in 2025 as well. It would be huge for Kansas City to get to a point where Josh Simmons can come in and stabilize that position, because remember, we've talked about this. The Chiefs have started 5 different offensive tackles in Super Bowls in the Patrick Mahomes era. You cannot have that consistently and think that you're going to continue to win. It's something that they need to get figured out. And hopefully this drafting of Josh Simmons and him starting day one, which is what it looks like his trajectory is to be the starter week 1 at that left tackle position, is going to be huge for them. If he is able to take that step forward and he's able to be the guy, you have a guy at your left tackle that takes care of that. Then you have a question at left guard, and that's really your only question on the offensive line. I think that with Juwan Taylor out with the injury, you're going to get Jalen Moore. It's going to step in and start at that right tackle position if Taylor isn't able to go. If Taylor is able to go, you feel pretty good about your offensive tackles if Simmons is able to be average to above average. And then the rest of the offensive line you have to feel pretty good about. You have an all-pro type center in Creed Humphrey. You have a good to great guard in Trey Smith, and he's going to continue to get better. The question is left guard going to take a step forward or going to be able to take a step just to be average to above average at that position, because they're not going to be able to replace Joe Thuney with somebody that's going to be better at that position than he was. But all of that means giving Patrick Mahomes time to throw the ball downfield, time to look downfield and attack with the weapons he's got on this team. Because right now, You have Xavier Worthy, who's the fastest man in the NFL based on his 40 time. You have Tyquan Thornton, who is running ran a 4.3 in college. He's able to get downfield. He can be one of those deep threats. And he's a guy that Mahomes seems to be targeting early on in training camp. We talked about this again yesterday as well. It's a question of whether or not he will continue to have the types of plays that he's having lately when the pads come on. But we did get some information finding out that pads will come on Sunday. The Chiefs have one more practice on Friday before they will be off a day on Saturday, and they will come back and they will have full pads on Friday. That's when we're going to start finding out where some of these wide receivers really end up. Tyquan Thornton is one of those guys that you have to wonder if he is able to take a step forward. He's 6'2", and with his speed, it could be a real weapon for this Chiefs offense. Then you start talking about what Hollywood Brown brings to this offense. He's also a 4-3 guy. Between him, Worthy, and Tyquan Thornton, you can be running fly routes all day long and still have somebody fresh and healthy and ready to go late in the game or late in the season when they've been running those routes all season long. And that doesn't even take into account one of your best wide receivers in Rashee Rice, who I do think is going to take a big step forward this season. He started to last year, especially in the short and intermediate routes. He even got a couple of the deep shots last year and showed that he's able to do that. But I think that what you're going to see from Rashee Rice this year is he's going to really take the ball and really take over the shorter and the intermediate stuff on the field. He's going to be Patrick Mahomes' number one target when he's able to play. That's the big question, is when is he going to be able to play? Because we do expect that he's going to be suspended at some point. But before that happens, he's going to be, or after that happens, I guess probably more than likely, he's going to be the target for Patrick Mahomes. And I do think that he's going to be the focal point of this offense, and it's going to run through Rashee Rice. And then when it runs through Rashee Rice, you're going to have to figure out, how do I stop Hollywood Brown? How do I stop Xavier Worthy? How do I stop Tyquan Thornton if he's on the team? Jalen Royals, who we haven't even talked about because he hasn't been really doing much in training camp yet. How do you stop a Travis Kelce, who is going to have more help offensively than he's had in years on this offense? Between Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, there's going to be more talent around Travis Kelce than he's had on this offense for several years. And I would even say that it's more talented than maybe some of those offenses, even with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, because while Tyreek Hill is better than what they have at wide receiver, Tyreek Hill then is better than what they have right now at wide receiver. You look at the talent that was around Tyreek Hill in that receiving room, and it's not on the same par as what they should have going into this 2025 season. It's really exciting what this Chiefs offense could look like. And we haven't even talked about, I'm not even discussing right now what it could look like when you start talking about the running game. When you start talking about what Pacheco could do in this offense with Kareem Hunt behind him. And then you start looking at a guy in Brashard Smith who lined up at times as a wide receiver in training camp today, and gives you another guy coming out of the backfield that could be getting a linebacker as he comes out of the backfield, lining up a wide receiver, or he could motion out from the running back position and go out to a wide receiver and get a linebacker that way too. He has the ability to do things downfield with his speed and what he was able to do. He was a wide receiver coming out of college. He's now playing running back for the Chiefs, but his skill set and his ability gives you another option that gives you speed and gives you something else to look at, and something else the defenses are going to have to take into consideration when they're defending and going against this Chiefs offense. It's really exciting where the Chiefs offense could be as long as they're able to stay healthy. This is going to be a very fun offense for Kansas City. Again, assuming they get that offensive line taken care of, which it sounds like Josh Simmons is going to take that left tackle position going into the season at this point. So the biggest question there is Kingsley Suamataia. When we get back, we're going to talk about the defense, what we've seen so far from what they're doing, who's getting some reps with the first team unit, and what it could mean this year in 2025. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all of the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I am playing, and Locked On Chiefs is playing on Yahoo Fantasy Football, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making this your millionth league. I know I have a ton of fantasy football leagues, and I absolutely love the way that Yahoo Fantasy Football works. It makes it so much easier to track all of my teams and get all the players in where I want them. Our league's been running through Yahoo for years now. Easy setup, great mobile app, and the Smack Talk just hits differently in the message boards. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins on August 4th. Stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl, and let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. The Kansas City Chiefs defense in 2025 is going to look a little bit differently than they did in 2024. Most of the players are back, and I do think that that's a big thing going forward. But the big question is always going to be who's going to fill in at that third corner role, because you look at this defense and you feel good about your number one corner in Trent McDuffie. You feel good about probably your number two corner, whether that's Christian Fulton, who's on PUP right now, or it ends up being Jalen Watson, who is the guy that's playing the number two corner. But it's the third corner, it's the nickel role that really becomes the pivotal point as to how this defense is going to perform. And I say that because it continues to be Chamarri Connor. After what we saw last year, I didn't think that they would continue to try to force Connor into this role, but it sure seems like that's the decision that Spagnuolo is going with right now. Whether or not that changes could depend on whether or not when Christian Fulton comes back. If Christian Fulton comes back, then the question becomes, does he leapfrog Jalen Watson? And what does that do to the nickel role? Because one of the things that I expected was going to happen is that you would continue to see Chamarri Connor at playing the third safety role, as they're going to need him on this defense. When you lost Justin Reed, you're going to need to have somebody that can be a little bit different than what you have in Jaden Hicks, who's coming in, who I think will be a fantastic starter, but it's going to be a little bit different than what you had in Justin Reed in 2024. But when you look at it as it sits right now, it's Chamarri Connor that's that nickel role. It's not even a guy like Christian Roland Wallace, who I thought could maybe step in and take that nickel role, or maybe they would look at it and they would say, okay, Trent McDuffie, we're going to move you inside and we're going to keep Christian Fulton and Jalen Watson on the field. We're going to see whether or not that changes when Fulton is able to go. But right now, they're not having McDuffie play that nickel role, which makes me think that they're going to continue to have Chamarri Connor be that guy. To me, I don't like it. I don't think that that's the right move. I don't think that that's the right way to go with this defense, because when you look at what they're going to need somebody to be able to step in to that third safety role, somebody that can come in, maybe play the back half of the field at times, maybe be a guy that's going to split out and go get a tight end or running back out of the backfield. But they're going to need somebody good in that third safety role, because it's something that Steve Spagnuolo likes to use a ton. It's possible they'll use Connor in that role and use him in the role as the nickel corner as well. I think it makes sense to an extent, but at the same time, I don't think he's a great fit at that nickel corner role. He has ability to be your third safety. He has the ability, and the other part of the reality is he may end up being a guy that is going to be a starter for you at that safety position in 2026. And I do think that you have to be looking at this from the long-term perspective. Yeah, you want to prepare for 2025, but Brian Cook more than likely isn't going to be here in 2026. So you need to be having an idea as to what you're going to do at that position. And I do think that Connor could be the guy that's going to step in to that position and take that rollover. It's also possible that Kansas City is just going to look at it and say, okay, well, Connor's going to be your third nickel or your third corner and your nickel corner, and you're going to have Mike Edwards be that third safety. I don't like that near as much, because I don't think that Edwards gives you the flexibility that a Connor would on the field at the same time at that safety position. Again, I also don't like the fact that Connor would be your third corner. I think that you'd be better off having Christian Roland Wallace come in, or having Trent McDuffie move to the nickel spot and have one of the other guys go outside, whether it's Christian Fulton or Jalen Watson, or how you're going to do that. But I do think that that's something that Kansas City looks like they're going to be continuing to focus on. I do think that it does seem that Spagnuolo wants Connor to be that guy that can be that nickel corner. And the one thing that I will say, I've said this a couple different times, but I do believe that if you're able to get to a point where maybe Chamarri Connor can be okay at that position, then it kind of opens things up for you. If you go with Christian Roland Wallace at the nickel corner position and have Connor be your third safety, then you can kind of rotate those guys because they can both play corner and safety, and you can have guys that can come in and you don't know where they're going to line up. You don't know what the role is going to be. It makes it a lot harder on offenses to know really what kind of coverages you're running if those guys are a little bit more interchangeable and you have a couple more mix and match pieces that you can use on your defense. So the question becomes, what is this team going to do when it gets on the field defensively? And you start looking at their second round draft pick, Omar Norman Lott, who is getting some reps with the ones. And this is what I expected to happen because I think that they drafted him expecting him to have a big role on their defense in 2025. They finally got a deal done, and it really wasn't his fault. Specifically, it was more of the way that the NFL was going and all the second-round picks were trying to get guaranteed money in their contracts. But they did finally get a deal done with him right before training camp started. He's reporting on time. He is getting in, and he is getting snaps. He is with the first-team defense, and that's big for him because he needs to know his position in the defense. He needs to be able to show from day one when the pads come on, which will be Sunday, that he belongs on this defense. They desperately need another body that can go in and give you pass rush next to Chris Jones. If Omar Norman Lott can show that he can do that, and he's going to be going up against great interior offensive linemen in Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. So if he can show that he is able to get some pass rush, I think that's a huge boost for this Chiefs defense. And it is a huge thing that they could use going into the 2025 season. One of the things that Ryan and I have talked about, and I do think that it's also possible, Kansas City could be looking at the market right now, at the defensive tackle market, to see, is there anybody out there that they could go add? With the added space of Trey Smith, they got to about $20 million in cap space. It's a little bit different now with the George Karlaftis signing, and the official numbers are not out there that I have seen yet on George Karlaftis and how his contract breaks down. But they do have a little bit more cap space than they would have had. It was about $20 million. So they're going to be closer, and they're going to have the cap space to go out and make a move at defensive tackle if they absolutely need to. I do think that that's still something that they could be potentially looking at because I do think that it's a need for this team. But having Omar Norman Lott go out there, having him be the guy that is on the field and getting reps with the ones and potentially in line to not necessarily start, because I don't think that that's going to be the case in 2025. I don't think, especially at the start of the season. But if he can be a guy that is going to be one of the first off the bench when they start rotating guys in to get after the passer and to do different things on their defense, I do think that that's a huge step forward for this defense because they absolutely need another guy that can get after the passer other than Chris Jones from the interior at that defensive tackle position. There's going to be a lot of talk all the rest of the offseason as to how this defensive line is going to take shape. A lot of time is going to be a lot of people are going to be focusing on how that defensive line is going against the offensive line when you start looking at the reps that they're getting in training camp, when you start watching, when we get to the point where we have the preseason games, how do those defensive tackles look? How do the defensive ends look? Is this Chiefs pass rush going to give them what they at least had last year, or is it going to take a little bit of a step back because they're missing some of the pass rush that they had last year? They need to take a step forward, but they did lose Treshaun Wharton, who was a big part of their pass rush in 2024. They have to figure out, can they get that replaced, and can some of the other players that they have on defense take a step forward to help them with that? When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the George Karlaftis contract and give you a little bit more details as to how that broke down. And then we're going to talk a little bit at the very end about what is coming in training camp in the coming days, right after this. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I've used Monarch Money for at least 7 or 8 months now, I think, and I've loved it. It is awesome to be able to have everything at your fingertips. You see, and it budgets out your money. It shows you what you're spending your money on. It shows you your income in, your income out. It is a fantastic app. You need to go give Monarch Money a try. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. George Karlaftis' deal is kind of funny to me, and I say that because when you sit here and you look at it, you're looking at a situation where it's 4 days after the contract comes out and the final numbers are still not fully released, which tells you that the agent wanted to get out the big numbers, and we will get the rest of it, and I will have that information for you as soon as I get it. But the reality is that what is being reported is that this is a 6-year deal. It's a 4-year extension for up to $92.5 million, I believe. 88 of it is normal contract money. There's also another about $5 million in contract incentives that he can earn. But the reality, and this is the important part, is that this is basically a 6-year deal for Karlaftis because it's 4 years on top of what he already had, and it's at an average of $17.5 million a year, which means they've got George Karlaftis under contract for under $20 million annually for the next 6 years. That is absolutely huge. It's fantastic that this deal got done when it got done because they absolutely needed to get Karlaftis signed to an extension so they could start working on Trent McDuffie extension, which is going to be much harder because it's going to be a lot more money. But when you look at this deal for Karlaftis, as it sits right now, from what we knew about his original deal, he had a cap number of about $4 million, $3.8 million in 2025. That includes his base salary of 2.3, a prorated signing bonus of about 1.5. So that came to about 3.8 as his guaranteed salary, as his cap number in 2024. So the question becomes, what was his signing bonus, which we haven't gotten that information yet, which is kind of surprising. 4 days after this deal broke, we still haven't gotten signing bonus information, and I've been looking for the past couple of days. We don't have signing bonus information. We do know 32 million is fully guaranteed at signing, another 30 million in injury guarantees that roll into full guarantees. So that basically means that what you're looking at with his contract is it's going to be kind of similar to Trey Smith's in a way, but it's also similar into what they do with Patrick Mahomes. And they look at the contract and they say, okay, in March of whatever day in March, it's usually around the 15th to 17th of March, because it's based on the new league year. If he's under contract on that date, then a future year becomes fully guaranteed. And in Trey Smith's deal, that is, I believe, going into, if he's on the roster, I think it's the third day of the 2026 season, his 2027 roster bonus becomes guaranteed at that point, and it becomes fully guaranteed money. So that's the way Trey Smith's deal worked. So I would assume that you're going to be seeing, based on the information that we have, we're going to see, eventually we'll have the full information on the contract, but I would assume that's how that extra 30 million is going to work, is that if he's on the roster if it's next year or if it's in 2 years, in 2026 or 2027, there will be another amount that will be fully guaranteed. And then more than likely, it would be, if it's 2027 or 2028, there's another amount that will be fully guaranteed. So he will get a full 62 million fully guaranteed at some point in this contract. But looking at what his numbers were to begin with, he was under contract. Like I said, his cap number was for just under 4 million in 2025. That's likely to go up a little bit. I would assume that they're going to give him a signing bonus, but again, don't have that information right now as to how much that's going to go up. So the total Chiefs cap space that they had was about $20 million. This is likely going to bring his cap number up, not down. So likely they will have less cap space available after this contract is said and done. It's possible that I'm wrong, but based on what they did with Trey Smith, they actually gave him a higher base salary than they've done in most of the contracts. So I would expect that they're not going to necessarily give him a base salary, but give him a decent signing bonus, which gives him maybe $10 million, which would spread across the contract a little bit less than $2 million. Well, at $2 million a year, because you can only spread out a signing bonus for up to 5 years, even though this is technically a 6-year deal for George Karlaftis. But this is going to probably get him a little bit more money in 2025. Obviously, he's going to get more money in 2025. He's going to get a signing bonus. His cap number will likely go up in 2025. His cap number may go down in 2026 because he was on the cap for his 5th-year option at $15 million. So in theory, it's possible that they're going to take that number down. What I would more likely expect, though, is that that number could stay about where it is, or they could lower it a little bit, knowing that they have some other issues that they got to get taken care of with Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes. They're going to need to move some money around in 2026 to be salary cap compliant. So it wouldn't shock me if 2025 goes up a little bit, but 2026 comes down just a little bit on this contract. Again, don't have the full details of what it is currently. We will get you that information as soon as we do have it. But this is a great deal for him. 6 years. Well, sorry. This is a great deal for the Chiefs. And the reason they're able to get this deal done is because they're paying him 2 years before they even have to think about paying him. Because the reality is he's under contract through 2026, through the end of 2026, regardless of whether or not he signed the extension. So by giving him this contract early, they're saying, okay, here, we'll give you a signing bonus. And again, I'm guessing that the signing bonus is close to $10 million. It could be more, it could be less. We'll see. But they're saying, I'll give you this signing bonus if you sign this contract, and here you'll get this extra money now. And that's how they're able to keep the numbers so low for George Karlaftis. Because I guarantee you, when Aiden Hutchinson's numbers come in, they're going to be much higher than what Karlaftis got. The contract was sold as 4 years, $88 million for up to 92.5, I believe, maybe 93 in total. That's not real. That goes back to how they have been talking about Derek Stingley's contract being 4 years at $30 million a year. That's not real because Stingley was under contract for another 2 years. The new money, sure, he's getting $30 million a year on the new money side of it, but that's not how the team is accounting for it. That's not how it's going to show up on the salary cap. And that's another reason why they need to work and try to get Trent McDuffie's deal done. Because if you get McDuffie's deal done, you're going to have, I would assume, at least a 4-year deal with McDuffie. So you're still in the same boat of spreading it out over probably a 5-year period would be my guess, because you're not going to go on a short deal with McDuffie. He's got 2 years left. So you're going to at least give him a 3-year extension at the very least. And I would assume they're going to try to get even more than that. If we go look at the deal that Sauce Gardner got, because that's one that just came out and is apples to apples to what McDuffie is going to be looking at, because McDuffie is drafted in the same year that you have that Sauce Gardner was drafted. So it's going to be a similar situation. Sauce Gardner's deal looks like it's a 4-year deal for $120 million or $30 million a year. That is true to an extent. And the extent of that is true is when you look at it and you say, okay, he's got 4 years, $120 million, but he already had 2 years left on his contract. They'd already picked up his 5th-year option, and he was already under contract for his 5th-year option in 2026. So he actually has 6 years left on this contract, and it's 6 years for a total of $151 million. That basically comes out to $25 million a year. That's a lot different than paying a corner $30 million a year. I understand how contracts are being sold. I understand why people think that it's a $30 million a year contract. The reality is you're not paying him really $30 million a year. You're paying him, and you're paying him a big signing bonus with the thought process, or you're paying him a signing bonus to give him more money in the current year with the thought process that he is now under contract for another 4 years past the 2 that you already had him. That's the exact same deal that you would have with McDuffie. And McDuffie would be in a situation where he would come in at around that same $25 million as well. So that's definitely something to look at. I do think that it's possible that they get a deal done with Trent McDuffie. Is it going to get done this season before the season starts is what I would like to see, because if you get that deal done, then you can plan for what you're going to do in 2026, and you can already have your plan set in motion with Trent McDuffie under contract, with George Karlaftis under contract, and you can already start planning on how you're going to deal with Mahomes' large number and Chris Jones' large number in 2026. But Karlaftis' deal plays center role in just about all of this. When you get him done at $17.25 million or $17 million, a little over $17 million a year for 6 years, you're now in a situation where you can go and you can get Trent McDuffie done. Hopefully it's going to be in that same range as what Sauce Gardner got, which was around $25 million over 6 years and $150 million in total. That's kind of what my guess is as to how that's going to get done. Karlaftis came in at 17.5. McDuffie coming in at 25 would put them at just over 42 million between those two players, which if you look at this defense you're building around those two players, and I do think McDuffie is your cornerstone that you're building around. Karlaftis is a building block, and I mean cornerstone as in the future. Chris Jones is the cornerstone right now, but McDuffie is a guy I think that you want to build this defense around for the future, and Chris Jones has probably only got a couple of years left. McDuffie has at least another contract, if not a little bit more than that at his position and his age. So I do think that that's something to take into consideration. And if the Chiefs can get it done to where they'd be paying him close to $25 million over 6 years, I think that's a good deal. And don't forget, you will more than likely hear it's going to be a 4-year deal type deal at $30 million a year. Not really the case, but we will get that information as soon as we get it. I will get you the information on George Karlaftis as well as soon as the full contract details are out, which is still not happening yet. Thank you all for listening today. Tomorrow, Chiefs have their last day of training camp before the pads come on Sunday. They will not have training camp on Saturday. They have an off day before pads come on Sunday. Friday's practice is the last day they will have before the pads officially come on Sunday. A lot to talk about when the pads do come on Sunday. We will be getting into that as well. But thank you all for listening today. Let me know in the comments what you thought about George Karlaftis' contract, what they could do with Trent McDuffie, and we will talk to you tomorrow.